there's seem to be these regular opinion pieces coming out on the Free Keene folks. And lately, the New York Times had one. I guess, is this I'm trying to see if this, I think this is an opinion piece. And it says, libertarians trail meter readers telling town live free or else.
Yeah.
And it says, Keene, New Hampshire. In most places, the parking enforcement officer reflects the municipal compact. Armed only with a gadget that can spit out a ticket at the forgotten drop of a dime. The officer quietly serves civic and commercial life by ensuring that meters are fed. In most places, yes, but not here in charming Keene, where parking officers figure in a philosophical tug-of-war between a small band of activists who live by the motto, Free Keene, and the great majority of residents who were unaware that their city was in bondage. Let's see, Keene's 2 parking officers, both women, are often videotaped by young adults known as Robin Hooders. They track the whereabouts of the officers by two-way radio, feed expired meters before $5 tickets can be written, and leave a business card saying that we saved you from the King's tariff. Welcome to Sherwood Forest, New Hampshire, where these acts of charity have led to some donations and gratitude, but also to sidewalk tensions, harassment allegations, and litigation. By the way, those claims failed. Yeah. The harassment claims and everything, they went to court and they were dropped. They didn't get far at all. So the court doesn't think that it falls under the realm of harassment, apparently. So that's a bit of a reach to say that. They are part of a broader effort by about 24 activists, most of them from someplace else, to unshackle Keene from the violent monopoly of government and its enforcers, including these parking officers who work in weather, fair and foul.
Most of Keene is from somewhere else.
It's never going to be enough, though, apparently. The mundane matter of parking has become so contentious that a third parking officer, an ex-soldier who served in Iraq, quit last year because, he says, he could no longer take the close-up videotaping and the taunts that I have condoned the droning of brown babies. So contentious that the mayor, the city manager, and the city attorney all declined even to say hello to me. I'm not sure I understand that.
No.
Is he saying who is contentious? It seems like the mayor would be taking his side if Free Keene folks were... I don't understand that. Anyway. Some local residents are speaking out in their stead by challenging the activists through a Facebook page with the unwieldy name of Stop Free Keene! Triple exclamation points. One of its organizers, Andrea Parkhurst Whitcomb, is asking the relative newcomers a fundamental question. Who asked you to come free us? For quite a while. So I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. I'm not taking a strong position, but I think that there's... I feel like they have every right to do what they're doing, of course. That's obvious to me. I don't even think that's up for debate. The only thing that kind of I think is interesting to me is how much they should be concerned about PR, right? I feel like they're arguably doing a horrible job on PR down there, and I think that's something to be concerned about. But you're not allowed to criticize that. Like they're completely unreceptive to criticism about that. I've been there, by the way. I was a Free Keener for some time. I was active over in Keene. And I liked what I was doing. Eventually, I feel like I did it for a while. I did different stuff, and there's all kinds of different stuff going on. So you can't. I mean, you have to bring up specific things. I feel like over time, I kind of got a sense of what seems effective or what's worth my time. To what extent would I feel like I'm making progress or not? And eventually, I kind of felt like, yeah, I've been doing this stuff, and I don't feel like it's that great. So how do you judge? And I know that, for instance, there was an activist, and I can't remember who it was, or I'm not going to say who it was, who did actually surveyed individuals in Keene and found that overwhelmingly a tremendous negative opinion of Free Keene folks. It's hard not to imagine that is a criteria of judging the success. If you're not convincing the average guy there that your goals are noble and worthwhile. By the way, I'm not arguing whether their goals are noble and worthwhile. I'm saying if you're failing to convince people that your goals are noble and worthwhile and so forth, then isn't that a pretty big criteria for judging whether you're being successful or not?
Yeah.
Because you would think my understanding is a lot of what we're about is changing hearts and minds, right? Getting people to understand
that baseline. So let's say you come into a community. It doesn't matter if you've lived there or not, whatever, but you start getting active.
Real quick, by the way, when I say overwhelming, like 98% in a survey, which is obviously not a really scientific survey. I think it was somewhat random selection, but just people on the street kind of survey.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But
that's huge.
You start getting active.
98% negative.
Right. You start getting active and you realize there's not enough people on your side to change things, no matter what you're trying to do, whether that's civil disobedience and thus trying to make people think, well, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have, these sorts of laws. Maybe we shouldn't be locking these people up. Or if it's doing it at the ballot box or by votes or however you want to do it. If it's just you doing it, it's not going to be effective. It's just not, unless maybe it is just you doing it, but you're getting that baseline of convincing people and changing hearts and minds and doing whatever you're doing in a way that brings people in and doesn't push people out.
I guess
that has to be the constant baseline and the constant vision that you have to have. Is what I'm doing creating more allies or not? Because in the end, you can be as rambunctious as you want, you can win as many court battles as you want and stay out of jail, but you're not going to change the culture and change the society that you live in to make whatever accomplishments that you make a constant. You don't want to have to be fighting for the rest of your life.
Some people might.
Will.
Some people might. The other thing I brought up is sometimes there's this encouragement of martyrdom, right?
Yeah.
That we're so bad off that you should do whatever it takes and take whatever risk you need to take to get freedom, because otherwise your life just isn't worth living as it is, because it's so awful. Right, it's so awful with the government the way it is right now.
You can't possibly be happy living in a
So here's the thing:
society.
Playing devil's advocate, I'm trying to imagine if it appears that you're not changing hearts and minds. I'm not sure what the expectation is at that point to justify continuing to do a particular tactic, right? Because I know that libertarians are particularly fond of pointing out how the government. Let's take a particular government program like government schools. Mm-hmm. What with your tactics versus we just need to do more of it? Or, at what point are you going to accept that you have a religious faith in what you're doing instead of basing it on measurable criteria of success, mm-hmm. and then deciding whether or not to maybe change your tactics,
or having a longer than 30-second plan?
Well, yeah, that's knee-jerk activism. That's the other thing, right? I've often called it knee-jerk activism, and it makes me very nervous. This idea that, on the spot, you're going to suddenly decide, well, I'm going to live as a free person, and that means I'm not going to do what this person's telling me to do, even if he threatens me with jail and whatever. And I'm like, have you thought out the consequences of if this goes sour, it doesn't go how you're hoping? Are you prepared? Have you thought out what's going to happen? And for instance, there's some people who did knee-jerk activism, and then they find themselves facing jail, and then they end up just bailing because I don't have someone to take care of my cat while I'm in jail for 3 weeks. But here's the thing to me is I think it's fairly religious, which to some extent is kind of hypocritical, because we're usually critical of liberals, for instance, and conservatives for being religiously married to their belief system,
right?
And despite all the evidence to the contrary. And I wonder at what point are you going to go, well, these tactics aren't the greatest. They're not that effective. There's plenty of evidence that they're not. There's certainly no evidence supporting your particular belief system as it is. So at what point are you going to stop being religious about it? At what point are you going to stop saying, well, I'm going to live as a free person, and then that's going to cause me to be more free?
Well, in a way,
I wonder. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here and put myself in the mindset of someone who continues to sort of religiously support these sorts of tactics. I mean, and what I mean by that is really kind of in your face stuff, like really in your face tactics. In any particular case, you can make the case to me, for instance, in a particular kind of activism that might be effective. That's fine. Mm-hmm. We can consider that particular on a case by case basis. But this sort of in your face defying authority, sort of knee-jerk civil disobedience, or knee-jerk activism, I guess I've called it before, where you could make the case that it might work because you might sway someone to your cause or something like that. But I guess the question is, I'm so distracted now because you're so distracted.
What? What is the question?
I don't know, Neil. I've lost my train of thought now.
For some reason, how should we create freedom?
I don't know. And see, here's the thing. I don't necessarily know what to tell someone. It's tough. If someone's doing activism and I don't think their activism is effective, on a case by case, I'm not saying everything in Keene is not effective. I think they've got some things that are effective and some that aren't. But this sort of in general, just doing whatever you're going to do, regardless of how that makes you look in the eyes of the public, that is something I have issue with. Because I think if 98% of the people in Keene hate you, then something needs to be changed. So there's that. But
being ineffective is one thing,
right?
Like handing out pamphlets and it not leading anywhere, but actively, like you said, making people hate you, or looking ridiculous.
We should be changing hearts and minds for the better. We should be making people glad that we're here. I would think in general. Obviously, you can't not piss anyone off. If you're getting political at all, you're going to piss off at least half the people. But 98%, that's a problem, right? So there's that. But the other thing is, if I have criticism of something, I don't necessarily have the right answer, right?